Business, Dr. Roberts.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We do have a presentation tonight under old business. We are going to review the 7 options, as you just heard about. Mr. French mentioned them. 2 reasons for this presentation tonight. As you're going to see, those of you that are experienced members of the board, this is a very much similar presentation that you've seen before. The 2 new members, this is kind of your introduction to this topic. It's a very sensitive topic. We're trying to solve a problem. But also at the end, there is a slide where we will propose to you a schedule for us to follow in trying to resolve the issue of the Deep Creek CSEP facility. So without further introduction, I'll turn it over to Paige, and you can begin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Roberts. I'll try to go through this fairly quickly, but again, slow enough so all the new board members can catch up real quick. Anyway, we want to talk about Deep Creek CSEP, the facility status and options, so we'll go ahead and start. Just to give you an idea about the current building, if you all remember, we do have several issues with that building. The second building, which houses the gym and the cafeteria, it's not in use. We had a study done by a structural firm. It was an evaluation that was done that basically said due to if we had some high winds, we could end up, the building's integrity would be compromised, and so that being the case, the students have been removed from that building and are being housed in portable classrooms. I'm not going to read every one of these, but some of the big ones, of course, we do have some below grade issues with water infiltrating into the building. And of course, that's obviously a problem with water entering the building. We have plumbing issues. Of course, the building's not ADA accessible. We have some site issues, and of course, its location causes some issues with access. The 7 options are up there. We're going to review each of those. I won't read them now because we're going to go into each one in fairly good detail. So, CSEP location, existing portables, George Washington Highway. Did remember the pointer today. George Washington Highway. This is the intersection. The 7-Eleven's right here. The building is here. The portable's over in this location, just to give you an idea. We did do some cost estimates on these, and again, this is basically to put a big old Band-Aid on it. It's to do the critical repairs, but it's a Band-Aid. Again, I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see HVAC replacement is $1.8 million. Window replacement, nearly $500,000. Structural reinforcement, close to $1 million, at least $600,000. And the 2 things that don't have a cost estimate, which is real important to note, is the one I talked about, the water migrating into the building. And that's the cost to be determined. We just don't know how much that's going to be. So at a minimum, we're talking just under $4 million to $4.3 million. And again, that's not total cost. But that's all those with the exception of the last 2 environmental impacts and the water migration. So again, that's option 1. Critical repairs, we would have to have design work done. And we don't think that could be done before September 2014. And of course, that is dependent on funding being available. Option 2, relocate CSEP program to Greenbrier Middle School. What we would do here is we close the current 8th grade wing at Greenbrier Middle, use that for CSEP. These Greenbrier Middle 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students would be housed in the other 2 wings. We would close the fire doors. They would not be locked, but we would close them. We'd have 2 security monitors in the hallway. We would convert a technology room from a conference room to space for CSEP's cafeteria and some other uses. We would have to relocate the additional programs we have at Greenbrier Middle. Staff development has some space, for example. CSEP has some greenhouses, storage containers. They would have to be relocated on site. We may need a couple of portables. And then really we wouldn't have any room to accommodate future growth at Greenbrier. Again, this is the site, just to give you a quick aerial. Greenbrier Parkway is in the front, right here. The main entryway is here. The 8th grade wing, this would become the CSEP wing. Bus drop-off in this area. Greenhouses, we just located them there. That's a good space and located close to the entrance. Moving the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade into 2 wings does eliminate the middle school concept. Again, the vacant technology room would serve as the cafeteria, would require appropriate staffing from CSEP. CSEP would need to use the gym. They would use that when the Greenbrier students were in their core classes. It's important to note that the CSEP staff do accompany their students when they leave classes and also during arrival and dismissal times, so they would be outside as well. The start and dismissal times would not be the same as the Greenbrier Middle start times. They would be staggered. We wouldn't need additional buses. It actually may even result in 3 fewer buses, 3 fewer custodial positions, and potentially 1 less nurse position. Just to give a quick floor plan of the building, again, that's your main entryway. This is the 8th grade wing. That would become the CSEP area. This is the technology room that would be converted. The areas in the red, the gym, student dining, and media center, are auxiliary spaces that possibly would need some limited use by the CSEP students. And again, the security guards would be, security monitors would be out here by the doors that would remain closed for both of those hallways. Again, we'd have some cost estimates, and I don't want to read all of these, but again, these are the same in each of the options. We'd have to relocate the greenhouses, culinary arts, science lab relocations, some timeout rooms, some security cameras, a few portable classrooms, and we're talking about a little bit over $85,000. There are some savings, of course. That's the utilities for the existing Deep Creek CSEP building, the 3 fewer custodials, the potentially 1 less nurse, and some grass cutting that we pay for at Deep Creek CSEP is just over $196,000. So that's your annual cost savings reoccurring. Okay, option 3. This would be relocate EVIC's portion of the CSEP program to Deep Creek Middle and re-add to Greenbrier Middle. Very similar to the last option, but you're dividing it between 2 middle schools instead of 1. So again, we close the current 8th grade wing at Greenbrier Middle and the 6th grade wing at Deep Creek Middle and use them to house CSEP. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grades would be in each of the school's remaining wings or houses. We'd have 2 security monitors at Greenbrier and 1 at Deep Creek Middle. Again, you convert the technology room for cafeteria and another support space at Greenbrier. Staff development would also have to be relocated again, as it was in the prior option. Greenhouses would have to be relocated. Well, we need probably about 4 portables at Deep Creek Middle, and there'd be no room to accommodate future growth at Greenbrier or Deep Creek Middle, and limited space for growth at CSEP. Take a look at Deep Creek Middle. Deal Drive is here, bus parking here, main entryway is right here. Front hallway is the 6th grade hallway. This would be the CSEP hall. The entrance for CSEP would be here, which is the old entrance leading down to the cafeteria auditorium right in this area. Again, moving the 3 grades into 2 wings eliminates the middle school concept. Deep Creek Middle, there's already an existing period for their CSEP students that are housed there, so they would just use that lunchtime. Technology room would be used for Greenbrier Middle. CSEP would require the use of the gym for PE while at Greenbrier, and at Deep Creek Middle in the core classrooms while they're in the core classes. Again, CSEP staff walk their students to and from class, and they would be also outside during arrival and dismissal times. Their start and dismissal times would not overlap Deep Creek Middle. We would need 5 additional buses because, again, going to 2 middle schools, 3 fewer custodial positions, and 1 less nurse potentially. The floor plan for Deep Creek Middle. Again, the main entryway is here. And the blue would be the CSEP program would be housed in that 6th grade hall. Spaces that would be limited use by CSEP, media center, cafeteria, and gym, auxiliary gym. And the additional security monitor would be at this entrance. That would be the main CSEP entrance. Greenbrier, this looks exactly like it was in option 2. Again, they utilize the back wing. convert the technology room, and the 3 areas in the red, media, gym, and student dining. If needed, they'd be auxiliary spaces. So again, that layout is really the same as in option 2. Cost, annual cost. Again, these are similar to ones you've seen before: the greenhouse and the sheds, culinary arts lab, science relocation, some timeout rooms, a few portable classrooms, security cameras. All those type of items would be needed. Again, the big ticket item up here is the 5 buses. That's $450,000. So total cost of over $560,000. Annual cost would be the bus drivers and the bus assistants that would be needed for those, and that equals $240,000. Annual cost savings, again, similar to the last one, the closing of the Deep Creek CSEP building, 3 fewer custodians, potentially one less nurse in the grass cutting, a savings reoccurring of about $196,000. Option 4, relocate CSEP program to Deep Creek Middle. Close Deep Creek Middle and rezone area students to Jolliffe Middle School and Hugo Owens Middle School. CSEP wouldn't require the whole building, so there would be sufficient space for an additional program for growth or potentially other use. We haven't identified another use at this particular time. Rezoning of all Deep Creek students would impact, of course, Jolliffe Middle and Hugo Owens. There's no classroom space available for future growth at Hugo, and portable classrooms would be required. Culpeper Landing development is within the current Hugo Owens zone, and we have limited space available for future growth at Jolliffe. Again, we'd have to relocate the greenhouses, the sheds, the containers. We also have a couple existing CSEP classes that are housed at Hugo Owens now, and they need to be relocated. No additional school buses would be required to transport CSEP students. We still would need 3 fewer custodial positions would be required, potentially 1 less nurse position. CSEP would have their own facility. The middle school housing concept would remain intact. Hugo Owens would have no classroom space available to accommodate future growth from Culpeper Landing, and that's really currently. I need to add a line to that sentence and say, but with the attendance zone adjustment, they would actually be in the Jolliffe Middle zone. So I'll adjust that before it goes on the web tomorrow. And Jolliffe Middle would have limited classroom space. The current attendance zones, and I didn't show all of it, but just basically the southern and eastern portion of Jolliffe Middle is up here in purple. Hugo Owens zone follows this line and is in the light yellow currently, and Deep Creek Middle is in the more gold color. Those are the current attendance zones. The proposed zone adjustment, if you were to select this option, would be between Deep Creek Middle, Hugo, and Jolliffe, effective for 2013. Take all of Deep Creek Middle in the gold, they'd be rezoned to Hugo Owens Middle School. And then all the middle schools residing south of Military Highway being here, and this is George Washington Highway, would be rezoned to Jolliffe. So this area would become the purple, and all of this area would become the light yellow. Just to give you the numbers, Jolliffe Middle, and again, we're in the summer, so we're in between school years, but this past school year, Jolliffe was at 704. They would increase to 942. Hugo Owens is at 1087. They'd increase to 1332. And the percentage of minority students at Jolliffe Middle would be 51%, and Hugo Owens would be 58%. Again, limited classroom space would remain available at Jolliffe Middle for future growth. And a lot of that probably would be filled up by the time Culpeper finishes building. Hugo would be over capacity and require portables. We look at implementation for September 2013. In the past, the board has offered grandfathering. In this particular instance, you can't offer grandfathering because you're closing a building, so they can't remain at a building that's not open. So you would have no grandfathering with this option. Again, the cost aspect of it, greenhouses, culinary arts lab, science relocation, timeout rooms, and portables, just over $85,000. cost savings. Again, utilities for closing Deep Creek CSEP, grass cutting, 3 fewer custodians, 1 less nurse, $196,000. And again, we may have some additional cost savings with some additional staffing positions, but we don't have all those figures yet. Option 5, purchase a site in Cavalier Industrial and relocate the CSEP program there. We'd close the current facility, and we would need to sell the property. We do have a developer who's interested. We have not negotiated a contract, but we do have someone who's interested. The site in Cavaliers, you'll see in a minute, we would not have sufficient funds by selling the existing Deep Creek site to purchase the Cavalier site. You still need to relocate greenhouses and sheds and containers. CSEP wouldn't require the entire facility, so we would have a little bit of space available for growth and also any other use. Again, it's located in Cavalier Industrial Park, just under 85,000 square feet, sits on 13.5 acres. It's for sale, listed at $4.5 million. It's for lease. And if any of y'all know commercial leases, there's a pretty complex formula for how they do the formula, but it takes into account a certain amount per year, operating expense fee, and a build-out expense. The building was built in 1980, and it had a renovation and addition in 97. Again, CSEP would have their own facility. The middle school housing concept would remain intact. No additional school buses would be needed. Of course, it would be longer ride for those students residing in the southern part of the city. Property would require improvement. We certainly would need to turn it into classroom space. The entire CSEP program could be accommodated there. We'd have about an additional just over 15,000 square feet for use by CPS, and we would bring lunch in from a neighboring school, and that's the current practice that we're doing now. Just to give you an idea, Cavalier Boulevard, you come in, not very far really. And on the left-hand side, this is the building. Front area would be elementary and some of the administrative offices, and we convert this to classroom space. We need to clear some tree area for a play area, and we could put the greenhouses right there in the back. We did have an architect take a look at it to make sure we could lay out the spaces and provide everything that was necessary for the CSEP program. We have done that. I'm not going to go through all of this, but that's all included here, and this back portion is the additional space. And in here also shows some room for growth with some additional classrooms. One-time cost, of course, this has a pretty significant price tag. The building cost, just listing price, $4.5 million. Building modifications, about 4.4. Again, you have greenhouses and security cameras, and we have some cabling that will need to be done. So you're talking just about $9 million. Of course, the sale price of Deep Creek CSEP is based. We did have an appraisal of the property. We had appraisal of the Brentwood site. That's a site that we've also talked about potentially selling. And of course, CSEP could be relocated mid-year if we needed to. Option 6, build a new CSEP facility. Of course, this is in the capital improvement plan that y'all approved last fall. Include renovation or replacement, and that was in year 12-13, the first year. Just over $13 million. It's in the city's approved budget in 12-16, in year 14-15 with a cost of 11.2. So it's in there, approved CIB, but it is not funded. I want to make sure everybody knows that. They've included it in their capital plan because they do a 5-year plan, but it is not a funded project. Option 7, rezone a portion of Indian River Middle to Greenbrier Middle, relocate the alternative school to Deep Creek Middle, and relocate CSEP to Indian River Middle Annex. That's a lot of steps in that one, so we'll go through each one. Again, rezone a portion of Indian River to Greenbrier. No Indian River Middle students would be housed in the annex. Of course, right now the annex houses Indian River Middle 7th grade and the alternative school on the other wing. CAS would be relocated to Deep Creek Middle. Again, the 6th grade wing would be used for CAS. Deep Creek students would remain at the building. CAS would utilize the auxiliary gym and the cafeteria. They could use the cafeteria when the spaces were not being used by Deep Creek Middle. Deep Creek Middle would probably need about 5 portables in this particular case. And then we relocate CSEP to the Indian River Middle Annex along with the greenhouses, sheds, containers. At a minimum, 3 additional school buses would be required for the tenant zone adjustment. That has to do with trying to get through Greenbrier Parkway. All of you, I think, have been down there, and it can get fairly compact and time-consuming in that area. So 3 additional buses, 1 less custodial position, potentially 1 less nurse. Again, we would have a security monitor, would be utilized at Deep Creek Middle, and we would use the fire doors to block that exit. Not block it, but close the doors for separation. Again, CSEP would have their own facility. The middle school housing concept doesn't remain intact at Deep Creek Middle, but would at Greenbrier Middle and Indian River Middle. Indian River Middle and Deep Creek Middle would require portable classrooms. However, they're really not currently located in high-growth areas. You'll hear me talk about that, of course, when we get into the CIP again in the fall. Even with the zone adjustment, Greenbrier Middle would have classroom space for additional future growth. Indian River Middle site, of course, this is Old Greenbrier Road, the main entryway for Indian River Middle. The annex sits over here with the main entry off of Providence Road. So where this currently is houses CAS in the 7th grade, on this wing, all of this would be utilized by CSEP. Don't know that that's exactly where we put the greenhouses, but that is a potential. We do have space for it on site. This looks familiar. Instead of this being CSEP, this would be the alternative program, would be in the 6th grade wing. The main office would be in this area. And again, the security monitor would be here. The potential shared areas, well, would be shared areas in this, are the cafeteria and the gym. Current attendance zones, Indian River Middle and Greenbrier Middle. Greenbrier Middle is in the blue. Indian River is in that kind of greenish up here. Essentially, north of 64 and then south of 64 are the current zones. What we're proposing in option 7 is students residing south of Military Highway, this being Military Highway, would be rezoned to Greenbrier. And then south of Providence Road is here, and Dunbarton. Dunbarton, of course, to give you an idea, that's the road Indian River High School sits on. So everything west of Indian River High and south of Providence and all south of Military Highway would be rezoned to Greenbrier Middle School. The numbers, Indian River Middle would go from about 770 to 581. And just to let everybody know, this is current year numbers based on the current school year that we just finished. Greenbrier Middle would go from 888 to 1077. Minority percentage, Indian River Middle would be at 62% and Greenbrier Middle would be at 61%. Classroom space would remain available at Greenbrier Middle for future growth. Additional portables would be required at Indian River Middle, and that's due to the CSEP relocation. Implementation of the zone adjustment will be in September 2013, and in this instance, we would include grandfathering of the rising 8th graders. They'd be afforded the option to remain at Indian River Middle when they are 8th graders for that one school year, being September 13 or 13-14 school year. So again, it wouldn't happen this coming September, but September 13. Cost, again, very similar to some of our other options. The greenhouses, the arts labs, all those things have to be relocated. We do need some portables. And the big cost in that one is the 3 additional buses at $354,000. The additional reoccurring cost is the 3 bus drivers and assistants at $144,000. Cost savings, again, is closing of the Deep Creek CSEP facility, one less custodian, potentially one less nurse, and grass cutting at Deep Creek CSEP at just over $142,000. So you've had all 7 options, and now we've got a summary to try to do a quick comparison. I'm not going to read all of these again. It has all 7 options across the top. Some different criteria on the left-hand side, whether it's a long-term solution, whether it leaves the middle school housing concept intact. The one thing we did alter a little bit since the last presentation is the target implementation date, so I want to point this out. This is the same target implementation date of September 2013. The ones that are predicated on funding, those are the ones that we altered a little bit because we were making an assumption, but I don't think it's good to assume that we're going to get the money. So we put predicated on funding because all of these being the critical repairs, the Cavalier site, and renovating replacement of Deep Creek CSEP are all dependent upon us getting funding for when they can be done. So I just want to make sure I pointed that out to you guys. Again, the cost for all of these, again, a summary of 1 through 7 across the top. And the costs are, again, the one-time costs that we would have associated with each option, the annual cost with each option, and then any annual cost savings. So, of course, the ones that are the most expensive are the ones that are either critical repairs, building a new building, or purchasing a site. Those are the most costly. This is new. We did include a meeting and proposed schedule timeline, so you could see the 2 at the top have been done, or the June 9th one will be done here shortly. We did an initial review on June the 11th. Again, we have the tonight's review, and we included the attendance zones in tonight's review in this meeting schedule. What we propose is between August and September, preparing the letters to go home to all the impacted areas so we could let everyone know what the options are, options 1 through 7. We are recommending the 2 public hearings, one being September 24th, the first public hearing, October 8th, the second public hearing, and October 29th, we get a recommendation from the superintendent, and then request final action from the board. Of course, the note at the bottom is dependent upon what option is approved by the board, then we can determine the remaining schedule for implementation. So that's about as quick as I can do that review.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Stutz and Mr. Gilbert's office for putting that together. Are there any comments? Mr. Bond.
Thanks. Actually, I have 2 questions. If you don't know the answer tonight, you can give it to me later. It's no big deal.
Okay.
The first question is, currently, how many portable classrooms are being utilized now at Inver Middle School?
14.
14, okay. And then the second one is, if option 7 is adopted, how many additional portable classrooms will be needed?
We're probably going to need 3.
So it'd be 17 total? Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Harris?
Thank you very much, Ms. Stutz. I was curious, I mean, it looks like options 3, 4, and 7 would ultimately have an impact on Deep Creek High School as well. And I've been hearing concerns about the dwindling enrollment at Deep Creek High School, and I was just wondering how these will impact the future enrollment at Deep Creek High School. If that's no.
The high school zones won't change.
Well, I know not immediately, but because of the students that the high school feeds.
No, we would not
Okay,
change.
so that won't change
no,
at all. Okay.
no. You'd have to change the high school zone for those different kids to come in. You may end up now, instead of 1 middle school feeding into it, you have 2, or you may have 3 instead of 2 feeding into the high school. But the high
Okay.
school zone would not change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Woods?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll just make a comment more than a question from Ms. Stutz. I mean, looking at all these options, I know we've been talking about them for a while, but it seems to me practically number 2 and number 4 seem to be the 2 best of the worst selections. I see option 1 is just we can't spend that money. Option 5, we can't spend the money. Option 6, we can't spend the money. Option 7 and option 3 are both close to $500,000, which we don't have either. So we're really, I think, focused on option 2 and option 4. And to follow up with what Ms. Harris said, of course, being from Deep Creek, there's a sense in the community of disenfranchise the community at Deep Creek because of the Grassfield High School and the loss of students at Deep Creek High School and the low numbers there, which have concerned the community. And now with option 4, you're talking about closing Deep Creek Middle School. I just find that unacceptable. So to me, I'm looking at option 2 and 4, and I guess that tells you probably what I'm looking at is option 2. But just kind of cut through the chase, because a lot of these things I just don't think we can afford unless the city council finds some money somewhere to help us with either renovation or replacing the facility. We're really, I think, stuck with those 2 options.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, as I understand it, this does not require action, but I would like to focus everybody's attention on the schedule that the administration has proposed for future presentations, notice to the public, and make sure there are any comments or concerns about that schedule, because once we get that going, we won't be able to turn the train around. Okay. Okay. All righty, hearing no further comments, we'll move on to new business, and there being none, we'll move to consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the
Move
consent
to
agenda.
approve.
There's a motion by Mr. Murphy, second by Ms. Craig. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Madam Clerk?
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Okay. Dr. Roberts, do you have any report this evening?
Yes, sir, very briefly. Couple of announcements. First, remind everybody, you just approved the schedule, but just as a reminder, there is only one meeting of the school board in July. The next meeting will be August the 13th. Secondly, I couldn't let this evening pass without letting everyone know that our long-awaited news on the waiver from the No Child Left Behind for the state of Virginia has been approved. We received the good news on Friday, June 29th, when Dr. Patricia Wright announced that the United States Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, approved the Virginia Board of Education's application for a waiver. This waiver from the certain provisions of the No Child Left Behind Act becomes effective for 2012-2013 year based on the assessment data from this current year. So that's good news. Specific details regarding this waiver will be shared with the board in an upcoming school board meeting. However, I would like to share a few brief highlights of what we know tonight. First of all, Virginia schools and school divisions will no longer receive adequate yearly progress, or AYP ratings, which has been a problem, as you know. Secondly, no schools will be required to offer school choice or to provide supplemental educational services. Now, we'll tell you,